had a large financial services company we were working with. They're in banking, they're in everything that you'd recognize the name right away. Their average time from idea to market, if it made it to market, was 14 months.
Whoa, that's a long time.
Yeah. And that's if it made it to market. And so what was interesting is when we started this kind of pilot team effort with them, we had a bunch of the people who were on the software development side, the tech side of things, that had already had a lot of experience with SAFe.
Okay.
And so they were delivering, well, it was kind of strange. They had a 1 month delivery, a 1 month sprint. No, I'm sorry. Yeah. A 1 month sprint with like a 5-week release cadence, which I was like, okay, so they line up what, like once every leap year on a Tuesday? How does that actually work? But in any case, that really wasn't their big problem. The big win from my perspective was that we convinced one of the pilot teams, let's try just as an experiment. Let's go to 1 week sprint. And at first, all the argument,
Chaos.
No way, this is impossible. We'll never, keep in mind, they're used to 1 month sprint with a 14-month actually delivering, from the idea, from concept to delivery to market. And so we worked with them on kind of backlog refinement and slicing things down in a reasonable way and slicing things so that they weren't waiting on, okay, why do you have to have every single design requirement laid out in front of you? Right. And in fact, we had a situation where they were paralyzed. They couldn't do anything because they said, well, we're waiting on the design architect to tell us whether we're going to use this specific API or that API. And we were like, okay, but why don't you take a chance now? 50-50 shot. It's only a choice of two things, right? Start building it now. Go for a week. If you don't have it, first of all, this inspires that person who you're waiting on to get you an answer, because if you guys go for 3 weeks, leadership is going to say, why did it take you 3 weeks to get these people an answer? And they built it in the wrong platform. That cost us money. That was waste. But also, why don't you just do anything now? And then if he comes back and says, hey, that's the wrong one, you go, okay, much easier to take this work we've done and translate it over. And if not, you're way ahead of the game. You got building, and hey, guess what? You picked the right thing. Awesome, let's go. So the thing that was really cool is after the first week sprint, they actually delivered something. Was it, I don't know if you recall, we had a conversation with someone in the design and construction Scrum Master course that we both were in, that we both helped deliver. And there was a question of like, well, what do you mean I'm supposed to deliver the whole building in a week? And one of the people in the class, I won't say her name, but very, very smart, very smart woman in the field. She said, no, but could you deliver a staircase in a week? And they were like, oh, yeah, I guess so. So
that question comes up every time.
All the time, right? And so this team actually delivered something of value that worked, that they could show in their review. Yep, here's the thing. You hit this button, it does that. You hit that button, it does that. If you put in the wrong password, it doesn't take you to your account. They were able to show all this functionality. And they're kind of the project manager in their department was stunned. She was like, I have to tell you, I did not think this was going to work. I couldn't believe you could deliver something of value in a week. They were pretty surprised themselves. So that was kind of a big, that was a good win. I was happy about that.
That's an amazing, great win. Lucien, that brings so much into perspective and like just creating some tension on the team. Like you coming in as the coach and making a suggestion and then listening to people's objections, right? A lot of times people will hear these objections and then they'll just like, well, I guess we can't do that.
Yeah. Change is hard, right?
Right.
If change was easy, everyone would just automatically change and be better. But it's a difficult thing. And especially if you're so used, this is the thing, right? I'm not a software developer. So I come in as this consultant and I tell all these people who have deep experience and knowledge in their world with their thing. And they say, no, that can't be done. And I say, okay, if I were to push on them and say, yes, it can, right? Then we're just pushing against each other. We're digging in our heels over nothing. Instead, I prefer to start with that question. Like, would you be willing to try for 1 week, right? We're not going to get a month ahead of ourselves. We're just going to go for a week. This is an argument in favor of a shorter sprint, right? Let's learn immediately. If learn that it didn't work out, we're going to know in a week, right? And then we can do something more effective. And so kind of coming from that place of curiosity, like, help me to understand, and would you be willing to try? I think it's one of the most useful sentences there is.
Welcome to the EBFC show, the easier, better for construction podcast. I'm your host, Felipe, Engineer Manriquez. This show is all about the business of construction.
Today's episode is sponsored by
Bosch Refine My Site is a cloud-based construction collaboration platform that applies lean principles to enable your entire team to plan, communicate, and execute in real time. It's the digital tool that works in tandem with your last planner system process and puts it all together in one simple, collaborative ecosystem. This easy-to-use platform is available in English, German, Spanish, Portuguese, and French, and can be used on desktops, tablets, and mobile devices. According to Spencer Easton, scheduling manager at Oakland Construction,
Refine My Site, in my opinion, is the best, leanest tool on the market for last planner system.
Here's what our users have to say. We've looked at 3 other digital scheduling platforms and none compare to the straightforward approach Refine My Site takes. From milestone planning all the way down to daily tasks, this program gives every general contractor and their trade partners meaningful collaboration, accountability, and KPIs. Register today to try Refine My Site for free for 60 days.
Today's show is also sponsored by the Lean Construction Institute. LCI is working to lead the building industry in transforming its practices and culture. Its vision is to create a healthy and thriving industry that delivers outstanding project outcomes every time for everyone. Check the show notes for more information. Now, to the show. Welcome to the show, Lucien, Zoll. Lucien, we are brothers from a construction mother, both born and baptized and raised and surviving the construction industry all these years. You, my friend, have always been so helpful, and it guided me to be the YouTuber that my son just confirmed this weekend that I am. And so,
yeah, congratulations on that.
Yeah, getting the nod from the child, I think, was even more important to me. That was a bigger win because a couple of years ago, he's like, "No way, Dad, no way."
Well, you know, when he's holding you to that Mr. Beast standard, right?
Yes, so. It is exactly. Still to this day, he checks what were your view count in the first 2 minutes? I was like, oh, that's a metric I'm not ready for yet.
Right.
I was
Listen,
like,
you're getting ready for that. You've been building it steadily. It's amazing to see.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Lucien, please tell the good people of the EBFC show, ladies and gentlemen, Lucien is a champion among champions. I have so much respect for him, and he has definitely guided me. And while he's giving his introduction, feel free to exercise your fingers and hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed to this show yet, Lucien and I are both thinking, why haven't you? Hit that subscribe button.
I know. I full disclosure, I am a subscriber to the show for sure. So, well, thank you so much for having me, Felipe. It's awesome to be on your show again. Now this show is really starting to take off, which is really cool to see. A big fan of the show, and as you know, of yours, as someone who has, as a fellow agilist in construction, this is have this kind of shared passion, and it's great to be. So for those who don't know me, and that's probably most, I'm Lucien Zoll. I am an Agile transformation consultant at Scrum Inc. and also a Scrum trainer. And so basically I came to Scrum Inc. through a friend, Avi Schneier. And, but I was previously, I had a 30+ year career in design and construction. I've worked both on the non-union and the union side. And I have a pretty clear understanding from that as a rule, whichever side you're on, if you don't make the boss money, you're not going to have a long future there. So you have to find ways to be productive. And there is, as you know, a lot of waste in design and construction. And so I think there are ways that it could be improved. And one of the things that I've learned from working at Scrum Inc. is how not only can we improve the process, but we can improve people's day-to-day lives, right? Oh, there's the puppy. Sorry.
Yeah. No sorries. I tell everybody, Lucien, this is a dog-friendly show.
All right.
Like and it will even allow like crackling parrots and other aviary type animals. That's totally cool. And if you have like animals that are getting into a fight with each other, then we just need to turn the camera to watch the fight and make it part of the show.
No, we've only got one animal, so she's fighting with herself, and she likes to bark at air. So
that's beautiful.
But in any case, so we spend probably 70% of our waking hours at work. If we can improve how that time goes, we've made a real impact on people's lives. And this is the type of thing that gets me up in the morning, excited to go. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's basically me in a nutshell.
I just need to know, because you've been friends with Avi for so long, and Avi's been on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, definitely we'll put a link in the show notes to check out Avi's episode. He does have, disclaimer, he's got an amazing Brooklyn accent that you might get lost in. So if you're into accents.
Absolutely. Well,
is it Brooklyn accent, or where is he?
No, it's Brooklyn. And I like to say that I don't know anybody who is more Brooklyn than Avi. He's the most Brooklyn person I know.
Yeah.
I mean, he happens to be a deep knowledge and thought leader, knowledge expert in the space of Scrum and agility. The co-author and contributor to the Scrum at Scale guide. He's been doing this a long time. And he happens to be one of the most Brooklyn people I know, which makes him also incredibly entertaining. So
yeah, I've never heard him speak and not been just enthralled.
Yes,
and because of not just the way that he sounds, but what he says and can get away with.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, this translates to every facet of his life. Avi and I, the way we know each other is through traditional Chinese martial arts. We're both used to be fellow competitors, and now we are fellow judges in a large circuit, international circuit. And as a judge, he will say things that I would never say to our competitors. And also he says those things and everybody loves him for it. No one is like, oh my God. Everyone's like, he's amazing. Right. If I tried to say any of that stuff, they'd be, pitchforks and torches running me out of town. So,
or if they're really polite, just the gasping, like,
yeah. Yes. Yeah. So he's got many talents.
I need to know, like, since you guys both, you said you were competitors at one point.
Yes.
Did you ever roll and get any good taps on him, or did he ever tap you out? What was that? Because I would think just based on knowing the two of you that I would default you to the stronger person.
Oh, that's interesting. So Avi is so what I will say is that Avi is incredibly skilled and is very, very pragmatic in the way that he approaches martial arts. He's not someone who buys into a lot of mysticism. He's like, either this works or it doesn't, much like his outlook on agile frameworks or anything else, right? He tends to be kind of no nonsense. And he's been that way when he was a competitor. And now as a judge, he's the same. He is who he is. So, it's been a pleasure to know him all these years and to work with him, whether it was, during competition or as a judge. It's just as much fun.
That was beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, that type of answer, Lucien, is just making you use your imaginations to figure out, like, did Avi ever get any good, hits on him or any, pins? Now you're just going to have to just keep imagining. And so I'll let my imagination run wild with that one. But I love that you had this practice of martial arts for a long time. And that's actually how you ended up teaching me. Like, I was your senpai in the early days of YouTube. My very first live stream, ladies and gentlemen, is Lucien teaching me the ways of the live stream and thinking about you, the audience, as we stream and what we talk about. And so the way you make me, you basically made me look like a magician. So I've got some friends that that look at what I do, and you were doing that through your martial arts. Like you had you're working in a dojo, and you were streaming for a long time. You still have videos that are kicking my video channel's butt.
Not at all. Not at all. So the interesting thing is all of this comes out of a need to pivot, right? So we had a streaming program at our school, and then COVID hit, and then we had, we went from 300 students to 0 in a space of 4 days.
Ooh.
Because everything went on total lockdown. And at that time, we made a decision. Okay, what are we going to do? We just sit here and wait for this to be over, and we don't know how long that's going to take. Those people may or may not come back, right? So we wanted our existing students at least to be able to keep up with the content, so that when things got back to normal, they would still have that invested feeling in what they were doing and want to come back. And then we also figured, well, if we can capture a little bit of market share, that would also be amazing. And so I think we did something that you do, which is we were very consistent. We used to stream a lot. So we were streaming on average 4 to 6 classes a day.
Whoa. That's
and
way
it was
more
just
consistent than me.
It was just my teacher, on camera, and me working the equipment in the background. And then sometimes I do warm-ups, or I would teach some of the classes because, it's pretty exhausting to teach all those classes without the energy you get back from having people physically in the room with you. Yeah. But so we were able to take our channel with that kind of consistent approach, from 3 subscribers to now I want to say it's somewhere around 1,600 subscribers, and we got monetized, all of that. And that was really cool. But
congratulations.
As someone who did
awesome
that,
feat.
as someone who did that, I will tell you, I have absolute empathy for what it takes. We've had that conversation like, okay, if 80% of my people or higher aren't subscribers, but they tune in to a full 1-hour show, if half of them subscribed, I'd be all set, right?
We'd be done. We'd be done, people.
So let's go, people. Hit that button. Come on.
Yeah, you don't even have to even pause the video to tap that subscribe button.
You won't miss a second, right?
Yeah.
It costs nothing.
We'll have to do an explainer video on TikTok to show people like how to actually hit that subscribe button to demystify the taps.
Exactly.
And you can turn the notifications off. So it's not like every time I post a video, you don't have to get in your feed. Like, I'm not that type of person that's going to show up in your feed that way if you don't want me to. Now, if you want to,
why would you not want to?
It was exactly. If you want to, like I've got some people that a video barely drops and they're already making comments on it. I love you, Dr. M. Thank you. Like, who you are. Yeah, that's beautiful, Lucien. So you're already like doing the martial arts. You said you worked in construction, both union, non-union. I think your take on that, we built a Scrum and construction class together.
Yes.
For Scrum Maker. That's the registered Scrum Master course that I teach all the time.
Yeah.
Available 24/7 online. People check my bio link to get access to that. That happened with lots of input. Lucien and I spent hours and hours and hours together making that course, refining it, and then making live versions of that we co-trained together. And I don't think any time we did that course, we ever had, less than 3 countries represented. People would tune in from around the globe.
Yep. Yeah, it's good stuff. I think, part of that is there's a real need for that. If you look at the technological changes that have happened in construction materials and the way that, just think about like, precast concrete walls that get bolted to a steel structure versus a bunch of bricklayers working for a month, right? How fast those walls go up now. So there have been all these, whether it's, in sealants or whatever, there's all of this incredible advance in technology for materials. And yet the way that we plan work doesn't really change. And I know you're involved very heavily in changing that process. I see a lot of the stuff that you've done. It's awesome. And I think there's such an opportunity there in the design and construction space. It's like even just instituting a daily Scrum with people, one thing, seeing the dramatic impact that can have. So I look at that and I look at the industry and how much room for improvement there is there. I say, wow, if we could get this whole industry to just do one thing, see the benefit of it, and then do another, right? Like
that's one of my first go-tos. Like when to go to teams, and I just talked about this. I was live streaming on a cabin Q&A, Ask Me Anything with my friends yesterday. And people said, like, they were asking me about Scrum because, you know, I love it. Hello.
Yeah.
And I said, in my new job where I'm working at the Bolt Company, I went almost 75 days and never brought it up. Now, I did tell my boss behind the scenes, everything that you see me doing, all the accomplishments, all the ways that I engage, all the ways that I travel, all the way down to how I do my expense report, I'm using the Scrum framework through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the biggest difference, like Lucien, you mentioned, you know, the biggest change thing is just those communication flows that you can get with a daily stand-up.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing to improve communication. Most projects, as you know, communication is non-existent. A lot of people think that because we publish something once a month and send it out to people, or we email people, like, you know, like people, the average person in construction today receives somewhere between 50 to 150 emails per day on the management side.
Yes.
And people in the field now are getting like iPads, and they're getting other, you know, touchpad devices or smartphones, and people are just adding them to this communication chain, not realizing or respecting that the way that they work is not going to allow them to be engaged in a device. And we still need to have the conversations with people.
Well, Felipe, you just jogged a thought loose here in my brain, which is something I've been talking about recently. People, when I'm consulting in non-construction areas as well, because people always have this concern of like, well, what do you mean? You know, what do you mean we don't want to follow a plan? Right? They take things very literally. They're like, what do you mean we don't want to follow a plan? And the way that I explain it to those who are not in construction is I say, listen, I have this background in design and construction, and I can tell you whether it's a blueprint for a shed in your backyard or for a 60-story building, every blueprint has the same words on it. They all say field verify. Right? Now, why do we need to field verify? The blueprint is the plan, right?
Right.
But we have to check the plan against reality, because we know it rarely matches reality. Right? You get there, oh yeah, I'm going to run my pipe this way. Oh, somebody put a steel beam there. It's not on the plan. Right? What do? Tell them to cut the thing out? No. But this is why field verify is on every.
I love that, Lucien. That is going to be the clip. That's the TikTok right there. Editors, if you're listening, that gold that he just dropped, it's on every plan. Field verify. So true that people want to, and there's also this like romance about having a plan that people think like we're going to stay in the honeymoon stage forever. And they don't even realize, like, did you even tell or share the plan in a meaningful way with the people doing it? Like, how are you onboarding people to this plan? Oh, we dug into it, and you're like, oh, you never actually told people? Oh, it's in the cloud. Like people say,
it went in an email.
Yeah, they'll name some app and be like, it's in the app. Didn't you get it? Like, no, that app is exactly like a file cabinet. I can see that there's a file cabinet in this new project's office.
Sure.
But how do I get in it? Like, what folder do I go to? Like, you put a file in a folder that's one of like 1,000 folders. How do I know that that's the folder I should be looking at like now before I got here?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, again, one of the strengths of Scrum. And I know there are many people doing a lot of really effective things. You know, there's tact and all of this other stuff that all has this thing in common of let's make it visible. Let's just make sure everybody can see what's happening as it's happening. And I think that's really important.
Super powerful. And I think, you know, you're starting to tap on the transparency, and I want to come and go really deep into transparency. We're looking at communication. But before we do, like the stories that you were talking about in the beginning with that financial company and like your experiences in construction, you know that batch size is typically way too big.
Yeah.
And a lot of people like to plan in these massive batches, trying to maximize the resource efficiency. I was even talking to an engineer recently, and he said, yeah, I've got, 5 engineers in my team. And he's like, it's my job as their project manager to keep them 100% at capacity every day, 5 days a week. And I said, I am so sorry that you've been misled into thinking that that's success. As like you're talking, right. I even said, like, you're talking to me right now for 20 minutes. Are you going to work an extra 20 minutes later because this is a side conversation according to your plans for the week?
Yeah.
He's like, well, no. And I was like, well, is this conversation valuable? Yeah, but I don't agree with you. And I was like, I know. You need to have the experience yourself.
Right.
I said, it's not going to make sense now, but think about later today. Like, you didn't work on your plan or with your team for 20 minutes, but did you learn something that can change
yes.
how you operate? Like you were saying in the beginning, like when that team went from that 14-month release plan to now sprinting in 1 week intervals and actually
yes.
showing and demonstrating real working product and interfaces for their team. I know without even asking you that you went exponential with that team's delivery.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the goal, right? That's why we do things in a pilot. You know, let's start with one team or two teams. Let's start with a smaller effort. So it's not as huge a commitment for leadership to wrap their brain around. They don't, oh my God, we're going to lose a ton of money with an experiment. No, let's try something small, get started, and show that this can work in your organization, right? Because as we know, it's not one size fits all. It's what works for you. So let's make it work for you at a small scale before we ever consider, you know, total transformation.
Yeah. And total transformation, people, is inevitable. Once you let Scrum seep into your four walls, it's going to spread.
Well, you know, and hopefully, because we don't scale until we're doing Scrum well.
That's right.
So that's the idea. Yeah.
That's right. That's one of the things I pride myself on too, Lucien, is like baking sustainable change with people.
Yes.
Like in my mind, I know all the steps to have an awesome like Scrum team. And if I could, I don't even want to like just convince people that this is the way. I like to show people like, hey, what are you working on? Let's meet you where you are with problems you have.
Absolutely.
And just go from there. Let them pull for more. And yeah. I've only had a handful of people actually say, I want to know what you know. And then, you know, those people, we go really deep, but a lot of the other people don't have the capacity to be learning at that, you know, at that clip
sure.
to make those changes. But when you help people like you do every day, and they get a little bit of capacity, now they're hungry for learning.
Yes.
Now you can have those conversations and go deeper and deeper and continue.
Yeah, I think success is contagious, right? So's losing, right? We get used to just getting beat up every day and having things not work out, and people become acclimated to that. And next thing you know, that's acceptable. Right. You know, we ask these people, you know, are you okay with the fact that it takes, you know, 14 weeks for anyone to make a decision? Is that okay for you? That's the life you're living and that's what you want? And they're like, well, that is what it is. So, and the thing is, culturally, that sets up this kind of expectation of a delay in decision making. And what people do is they take on 45 projects because they say, well, I'm going to, you know, when this person tells me that I'm dependent on, because we have all of this kind of organizational debt, right? So when this person tells me that I'm depending on to move forward, tells me I can't move forward, I have to have something else. Otherwise, I'm going to get caught standing still. Right. And, you know, but when the boss comes around, no one wants to be standing still.
Nobody. Everybody even says, Lucien, they always say, like, when you ask people just in casual conversation, like, how are you? They almost always are like, I'm so busy.
Yes. You know, you get the same answer when you ask, how successful are you? People don't have a real sense of value because they're spending so much time worrying about whether or not they're busy. So they make themselves so busy that they don't have time to think about the value delivered.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, let's unpack that transparency a little more, because I think, you know, a lot of stuff we're hitting on, and people, if you want to learn more about batch size and TAKT, like Lucien said, obviously in the show notes, click in the description. I will have the video for you that shows you the concept of what Lucien and I are talking about, how reducing batch size counterintuitively increases your throughput. You'll be able to be an exponential value deliverer as well. And we know, disclaimer, value is subjective. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, So here's the thing, right? Value is subjective except for to the CFO. The CFO, there's no objectivity in value. Yes. Value is what did I spend and what did I get?
Yep.
That's it.
Simple.
Yeah.
For the rest of us.
Well, yeah. For the rest of us live in a different world probably. But yeah. But I think we have to know our audience, right? So when you're talking about individuals at a team level who are actually working in the field, what's value to them? It's probably not the dollars, right?
Right.
It's how much did we get done? And did we have to go back and fix stuff? But, the higher into the hierarchy of a business you get, the more they care less about those things, right? The more they care about what did we make? What did
That's
we spend?
amazing too, Lucien. You said that because I've worked with project teams in the past and even currently, and there's a disconnect between what the organization thinks is important and what the individuals on the team think and feel is important based on their experiences. They're almost never aligned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter if the company is employee owned, publicly traded, privately held, like it's not a factor. Like there's so much going on in the everyday of what people have to accomplish that there's not a lot of time for looking at, is what I'm doing making a difference? Like, where is the transparency to even see how their actions influence anything? Like sometimes these daily actions are so delayed that they don't know for months or even years later. I was with an executive recently, Lucien, and they were talking about a job. We went to visit a job, and the job they were at the time, the director of that job had finished like 2 years ago. And they just found out today, 2 years later, that they made more profit than they thought on that job. Like it took that long to get the feedback.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about that during the design and construction Scrum Master course, right? This idea we had actually someone from England. Again, I don't want to name people in that class, but we had someone from England who I had a lot of respect for what they had to say. And they were talking about, we never ask for feedback. Once the building is done and we sign off, we go to the next job. We never think about that building, but we should be getting feedback as we build it. Then we build buildings people actually want to use.
Yeah. And there's people that intentionally like try to keep the stakeholder in the construction industry. And I'm sure other industries, people chime in the comments if you're experiencing this in your world too, but there's people typically on the owner side that with good intentions try to limit the ability for the stakeholders to give feedback.
Yes.
Because they're so worried about scope creep. And it's actually like not to their fault. It's how they're measured. Like sometimes there's an incentive for them, an untransparent incentive, if you will, to not allow any changes. So you can totally build the wrong thing. Like I remember our friend from England, he's got a famous last name, but they're not related. I know exactly who it is. And he was saying like they went back as like part of some other research he was doing just to see like how they're doing as a company. And the people had nothing but hate for the building that they were working in. And this was an award-winning building.
Yeah.
So you could totally build the wrong thing to win awards, but it totally dishonors and disrespects the people that have to live and work in that space every day. So how are we making things more transparent, Lucien?
Yeah, I think, this is something that this is something that really resonates for me because I've seen how important it's, right? Scrum does not fix your problems, it shines a light on them. It's up to you to have the will to fix those things. If we shine a light on those things and we say, look, we've just brought to light that you have this thing in your organization that is costing you money, is making people miserable, and is affecting your ability to get to market faster. If you don't want to do anything about it, can't force you to do that. And on the other side, we have people actually doing the work, being told, okay, we're going to try this new thing. And this new thing's going to be great because it's going to shine a light on everything. Everyone's going to have full transparency into what's going on. People start to get kind of nervous, right? Because, well, if you're going to make everything transparent, does that mean the boss is going to be watching me every minute of the day? Now that happens right now, right? Some of the companies that I used to work for in the construction space, you know, they have an iPad that they send with the super with a tripod that gets set up on the roof, and the camera's on all day, and they have drones that fly around and take a look. And, you know, they're not just watching for the progress on the job. They're looking, okay, is everybody where they're at doing what they're supposed to do? That kind of transparency is fine if you're not using it in a punitive way, because what we want to do is be hard on process and easy on people. And if people see, you just mentioned, like, show me how you're measured, right? If people see that transparency is used as a sword against them, transparency dies, right? Because no matter what you want to do, you're not going to get the truth out of people when they feel like they're going to get punished for telling you the truth.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I think I like to always think of transparency and the visibility we get out of doing Scrum as a shield for the team. And at first, people have a hard time with it. They're like, well, how is this going to protect us that everybody can see everything? And the reality is, if you want to make changes at an organizational level, at some point, you're going to need leadership to buy into it and be to get behind those changes, or they're not going to happen in the first place. And if they do, they're not going to stick.
Right.
And leadership, as you mentioned, has different priorities than people do work. And so that visibility allows us to then have real data that we can show leadership to say, I know that you think everything is as good as it can be, but look, we have data because we made everything transparent and visible. You can see, here are the places where you could improve your process, make life better for everybody. People don't have to work 90 hours a week, and you're going to get more done. And so if you have real data, then it's not this emotional, you know, you guys are asking too much from us, but here's the place you can pull that lever. You can turn the knob that's going to make things more efficient for you and better for us. And that's win-win.
Win-win. It's the way to go. And sometimes with those leaders, like I've found where teams have said, like, we can't change anything. Like, it's locked. Like these things can't change. And I always ask, like, well, how do you know you can't change it? Have we ever asked? And just being like a child. And sometimes, I mean, I've been accused of being like a child or asking a lot of questions. And with some people, Lucien, I've had to say, like, beware. I may ask a lot of questions, and you can always tell me enough. You can always tell me enough, and I'll peel back. But I'm not going to let it go. I'm going to I'll go find somebody else who could answer the question, because I'm here for a reason.
Yes.
You know, we do sometimes, Lucien, we get called to help, you know, A teams go to A+ teams.
Yes.
That does happen. We go for the excellent teams. And, you know, and sometimes you're working with teams they're struggling, and it's not through bad intentions or being lazy and things like that. Sometimes people just don't even know, like, how are we winning? Like, what does winning look like?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure you've seen, like, you drop into organizations, like, people just, you know, at work, working, and they rarely ever work on how they work.
Oh, absolutely. My colleague and colleague at Scrum Inc. Likes to call it Coca-Cola rule. And the Coca-Cola rule, he was working for a Wall Street investment firm, and they had been told at one point by somebody 20 years ago, we don't invest in Coca. And this just became the mantra in-house. And so, you know, finally somebody said, well, why don't we invest in Coca? And no one knew. People don't even remember why anymore. They just get institutionalized to doing it that way. Right. And so why is incredibly important, right? Why are we doing things? And if we're not getting value of it, what are we going to do about it? Because none of this stuff happens by accident.
Right.
It's all intentional and deliberate.
Yeah, the way people are working, if you're in a low transparency environment, that's by design.
Absolutely.
But the good news is, if you're listening to the show, you can take small steps to increase the transparency. And one of the easiest things you can do, because everybody already gets together at some point during the week, your team is together, at least majority of you, and you can be the little voice that says out loud, why are we focused on this now versus something else? Or why is this important? And if this is the important thing, should we deprioritize some other things and have a little bit of trade-off.
Absolutely. I think if we find ourselves asking why and we can't come up with a good answer, that's a great sign that that's something we might want to change.
We're working with this team. They're trying to button up a building and make it watertight and weather-tight. And there's just all this pressure from leadership, like everything's important, do everything at the same time.
Yeah.
And so they put scaffold around the entire building, way ahead of having material to do anything with it. And it choked off their site work. And every day there's so many different ways you can go. If you don't have a method in place to prioritize, which in Scrum we call it goal setting, people using a goal, that helps you to say what's in this time, and you can say no and push stuff out. Like that ability to say no. Like have you ever had any stories, Lucien, where you saw people like start to use the word no where it wasn't common?
I think that's something that we often will see. I think, first of all, this is one of the benefits of having a framework, right? I'm obviously super partial to Scrum as a framework.
Me too.
But
Super.
whatever framework people use, their mileage will vary, right? But
that is so polite. Right? I love that one. I'm stealing that one, Lucien.
Anytime. Right. So, but the thing is that having 3 roles where we have 3 specific sets of accountability, because previously what would happen is somebody in a position of power or influence, whether that person's a leader or wherever they reside, they have a sphere of influence within a company, and they come to somebody, they kind of circumvent the process, and they come to somebody on the team level and say, hey, I just need you to do this one thing. Won't take you long, right?
It's insidious.
It's a death of 1,000 cuts, because pretty soon that person's not getting the things that they focused on as their goal with their team to get done. And everybody's looking around like, well, why didn't you get, yeah, but you don't know. I had like 14 things I had to do on the side. Right. And so when we first start doing Scrum with teams, what we really try to get across to people is, okay, the product owner is accountable for prioritization. The Scrum Master is accountable for the team's performance, and the team is accountable for the how. How are we going to get the what that the product owner is setting out done? And so when we set that up, the Scrum Master is somebody who helps to serve the team by cutting off distractions and circumventing. When people try to go around, they meet them, they block them and say, no, actually, it's great you want something done. All you have to do, we'd be happy. If it were up to me, we'd do it right now. But you have to have a conversation with our product owner because they're accountable for prioritization of this team's work. So just have a conversation. I'm sure what you're saying is reasonable and it will make it on the back. But it also empowers people at the team level to say the same thing. So they don't have to be the bad guy, right? It's not that they're saying no, they're just saying, talk to the product owner. And the product owner also has the ability to say, okay, I'm not going to tell you no. I'm just going to tell you not now. Right. This is like when you have kids. No is like a final thing. No one likes to hear no.
Yeah.
But telling them, yeah, that may happen, but it's not going to happen right now. We're not going to throw our sprint into chaos so that you can get this really cool thing you thought up over the weekend implemented.
Yeah, we had a friend. So I have a friend, Jesse, and Jesse said he used to be this guy, and he gave himself this nickname, the Solutionator, because he would just come, like something would be happening in a construction team, and at the time he was like supervising a large group of plumbers, and he would just solutionate at them and like, I know you're doing this and you've planned this, but now you should do this because I think, with no context of what you're doing or planned, this is the way to go. And one of the guys that he worked with, his name's Noah, he said, yeah, that's true. And I hated Jesse during that time period until he became enlightened later as the Solutionator. So that's a nickname that nobody wants to be proud to have, but that kind of stuff is like you said, Lucien, like these people, they think of the things and the intentions are definitely good. And a lot of times I'm sure the features, the requests, the shifting could be potentially beneficial, but I think we don't pause and plan and analyze like we learned Scrum is built on lean concepts. Like, let's evaluate this. Let's do a second of analysis. And then that, in Scrum, we have that beautiful accountable role, the product owner, to do that. And they can absolutely get input from the team and make a decision on when is a better time to do this change, right?
Yep.
It might be now, and it might not be.
Right.
Probably not now.
Well, this is also why when people, we always ask a question in class, who can add to the product backlog and when can they add it, right? And the answer is anybody can add to the product backlog at any time. There is now, when we present this information now, we've added the following, which is with a conversation with the product owner. because just throwing stuff randomly into a backlog that the product owner hasn't approved or had a conversation around is a great way to send something to a list to die and never get done.
Yeah.
Right. Because that person who's accountable has no sense that it's even there necessarily.
Oh, you're going to love this, Lucien. I was giving a Scrum talk at a conference some years ago, and the company sponsoring the conference, it's like, this is a huge show. Like, this is a big, gigantic, if you're in construction, the name of this company, and they do some software as well. And one of the people came up to me after the presentation and they said, yeah, I'm actually a software developer, and they encouraged us to come to this talk because it had to do with, something that we thought was born in software, which it wasn't, people. It wasn't, but they're, check out other podcasts for the history of Scrum.
Yes.
And they said the way you described, like, how things get onto the backlog and like this list, they said, I don't think we're doing Scrum right. And I said, well, tell me more. And they said, like, right now today, our team of 8 people has a backlog that's over 3,000 items long. And I said, yeah. I was like, somebody in your group doesn't know how to say no. And I said, and when you've got 3,000 items, and they were not exaggerating, like, they had this software that tracks and it shows metrics and all this stuff. And all that did was demoralize this whole team. And that completely undermines their ability to do productive and good work, because that burden of knowing that I've got 3,000 things that I'm not addressing, because at that point you can just round to 3,000 and say there's 3,000 things we're not doing every single week. That just
how does that make you feel?
Yeah, it makes people feel horrible.
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
they
not
came
to mention
to me,
it
shoulders slumped down.
Yeah. Not to mention it gives you a potential of a 6-hour backlog refinement session just to address what things are, not even to get them refined, just to say, well, what is this?
I told him, I said, now, I said in a follow-up, like, how long has this been the case? And they said the entire time they've worked there. And so they came to join, and I was like, here's one thing you can do. Talk to the person that's most, because they didn't have a mature product owner, and they definitely did not have a mature Scrum implementation. I said, someone on your team is like the most responsible for those requests and getting stuff on that list. I said, I would advise you to have them start to just every day delete some things that are no longer relevant, because the way that the product you guys have today is not the product it was even 6 months ago.
Absolutely right.
And I was like, do that for a while.
No, Felipe, my wife has a policy in our house. She hates clutter, right? So she has a policy in our house. If there's something in the closet and I haven't worn it for a year, it's gone. There's no conversation around it. It's just gone, because she's like, if you were going to make use of it, a year is plenty of time to have made use of it. So then you go, no, but I love that shirt. And but you don't wear it. Right. And so we shouldn't wait a year with backlog items, because the relevance of my shirt, it may come back around, but the relevance of a product backlog item that's a year old is probably 0.
That's right. That's right. I have like, I did that exercise. Like, actually, Jeff Sutherland inspired me to think about my clothes, and he didn't talk about this. I saw some other genius talking about like why they wear the same outfit every day. And you see a lot of this with people that are like, very high-minded, that can think and super creative type of people. It's typically have like some type of what they call a uniform. And Jeff always wears black shirts, right? So when I saw this and I was like listening to the things that he comes up with and what he's got his mind on, he wastes no time picking his clothes out, right? And that gives him like all this extra bandwidth. So like I'm wearing one of my branded EBFC show shirts.
Dig it?
Yeah, which is easier, better, faster, cheaper. Hello, people. It's the whole reason Lucien's on, because he checks all those boxes for me. He knows how to make everybody's work easier, better, faster, and cheaper. And if you don't like the word cheaper, get a dictionary. It's not a bad thing. It's not low quality.
Right.
It's less expensive, which is cha-ching, more profitable for you and your team. And also side effects include being less frustrating. Hello. And so that I did. And I've got my uniform, and people are always like, how many of those shirts do you have? I was like, well, of these I have 12, and of these I have 24, but they're just variations of the same thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think about it. I just lift, grab, reach into the darkness and pull out the right shirt for the day.
And still looking sharp.
Exactly.
Nice.
I love that. So I want to jump back into organizational leadership.
Yep.
So you've been working. The first time I met you was already years ago. I can't believe how fast time flies. And since then you were pivoting into moving into deeper organizational type transformation. I would love to hear from your perspective, what is like something that people just don't have right at the start for organizational leadership transformation?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think one, everyone, I won't say everyone, many people are familiar with the idea of change management. I think when we start to introduce change management as a phrase, again, people get very literal about things. Managers freak out. What do you mean you're going to change the managers? Like, am I losing my job? What's happening? Right.
Right.
And in fact, what we really are talking about is resistance management.
Right? Oh, I did not see that coming.
Yeah. So we are trying to manage the resistance that's going to happen when we try to change. And I think one of the things that I see a lot of organizations get wrong is the communication and messaging around them. Right. So we want to make a change. Everybody starts to panic. Right. Because, hey, I've been working here for X number of years. Everything's been going along fine. We make a profit. Everything's fine. Right. Yeah, I have to work, I have to work nights and weekends, and, I'm totally burnt out, but that's just work. Right. We don't expect to have fun at work. And I think when companies want to start doing things in a different way, they don't necessarily understand how important it is to be really clear in the messaging of why you want to make those changes from the benefit organization's perspective, but also what's in it for the individual. Right. And I often think about this, like if you get an email from a colleague inviting you to a meeting that says no detail about what the meeting's about, how likely are you to go? Right? If it's someone you're really close with, okay, yeah, I'm going to go and find out. This is my buddy. I need to know what's going on. But in general, with, as you mentioned, all of those emails that you get, the request to go to all of these different events, have to prioritize things. And so if you get an invite to a meeting that says, in this meeting, we're going to cover this and this. This is why it's important that you have a much better chance of having show up.
Right.
And so the same is true when we want to implement change. If we want to change the way we do things, we have to explain to people, we want to change the way we're doing things because we need to be more competitive. Because by the time we realize we need to catch up, our competitors are gone and it's too late. Right.
Right.
Or we want to make these changes at an organizational level because we see that there's a lot of waste in our process. Nothing that's the fault of any of our individual people, but in the way that we're doing work, we're losing. Even if we make a profit, we could be making more of a profit. And if we make more of a profit, that's going to benefit you as well. Right.
Right.
And then here's how this is going to benefit you as an individual as we run experiments to find out what the best way for us to make organizational changes are. If you can't tell people what's in it for them, you can expect a lot of resistance. So I think communication is kind of the thing I see organizations get wrong the most frequently when we're talking about making organizational changes. The other thing I would say is that they don't see this as something that they need to do from an organizational perspective. Say, okay, Scrum is something that teams are doing, right? But again, if you don't have that will somewhere at a leadership level, and you've talked about this, don't wait for leadership, right? If you are an individual on a team, start now. And I wholeheartedly support that. I agree 100%. But as far as that turning into a larger movement within the organization, if leadership is just deaf, dumb, and blind to it, they don't want to hear, they don't want to make changes, then it's very hard for that to take hold, right? It might be something that you can implement now and you go, hey, we're able to make our life better. It doesn't even matter if the rest of the company does this. Okay, we're more efficient and we're happier. We're living a more sustainable life. We get to see our families and the work is still getting done. That's a win.
Right.
But at the organizational level, if leadership doesn't at some point get involved and get behind it, support it, then it's not like this.
Absolutely true. I even heard a Scrum talk on a webinar, and I can't remember who or what it was, and they were interviewing some executive that their company had undergone like a transformational effort. And one of the things in that type of interview, you start to hear the philosophy and the beliefs of like how those leaders think. And again, we talked about being misaligned on what's important to you. And this company is more than 100 people at this company, and they were doing the Scrum transformation in a rather short time, in less than 9 months. The throughput of what they could get done more than doubled. And the leader thought, this is so great. I want more of this. And he's like thinking, setting targets now for people to like double it again. And I was like, and I'm leaving this webinar gone because I didn't hear the person that was like asking them the questions like, okay, you're for forever and a day, your company was operating at this level. And now suddenly in less than 9 months by implementing Scrum, you're operating here. And you're just thinking like, how can I get more out of them and squeeze? Like, is that the next thing? Like you fixed one problem with throughput.
Yep.
Now maybe you should focus on like, where do you want to go as a company? Like what markets do you want to serve? Like, can we get into other areas or other skills that our people have been asking? Like, is there something that our people have been asking for a long time that now we can do and give them? Like if you're up here now, you're making twice as much in profit, right? Are you going to just take all that away? Or are you going to, some of that you should reinvest? I mean, be responsible. There's so many different things you could have done, but saying like, we're going to try to double it again. I was like, nope, I'm gone. And I left.
Well, Felipe, I think this is one of the reasons why we now at Scrum Inc. have a registered Agile leader at scale class or it is a course for leaders specifically, as you undergo this transformation, what do you need to be conscious of? What do you need to make sure you're aware of so that you can head off problems? What do you need to do to be most effective as a leader? Sometimes that's also getting leaders to understand that, like if our CEO is concerned about the minute details of how work is getting done, that's a problem.
Right.
Because our CEO is getting paid the big dollars as they should for having a clear vision of where our company is going to go, for navigating the minefield of the landscape of whatever business we're in. And yet so many leaders just want to hold on to that steering wheel with a death grip and not let go because they don't trust people to do the right thing.
Right. Or they were really good as they were growing their business.
Also,
and they were, right?
Absolutely. They're a subject matter expert, and that's how they got to where they are. And it's hard to kind of take off that subject matter expert hat and let people actually do it.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story, Lucien. Lucien, thank you so very much for coming onto the show. You have not disappointed in the least bit. Value has been delivered. I'll say that a second time. Like, you have delivered so much value. I've enjoyed talking. I can't believe how fast the time went.
I can't believe it's already over. And I will say it's, anytime I get to have a conversation with you, it's effortless and time flies.
Very special thanks to my guest. I'm Felipe Engineer Manriquez. The EBFC show is created by Felipe and produced by a passion to build easier and better. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, everybody. Let's go build.